Thank you very much, Dr. Escobar. I listened with very great interest to all that you had to say, and I really want to say that I deeply appreciate the generosity of your remarks. You sound very much like the next member of Parliament for St. Thomas South. We are determined to make that a reality after the next general election. And the general election of which I speak, of course, is the one that Ms. Monty is supposed to call. Delegates to this 61st annual conference of the Democratic Labour Party, I feel honored once again to have the opportunity to address you as your president and political leader, and should like to welcome all of you who have determined that you had to be here today to identify publicly with the Democratic Labour Party. I should like also to welcome our visitors who were kind enough to respond to our invitation to this annual conference. A special welcome is of course due to the members of the cabinet, members of Parliament, whether of the lower or upper house, members of the executive and general councils, members of the Young Democrats, the Women's League, and members of our overseas branches, whether represented here or joining us online. A special welcome, of course, is also due to members of the diplomatic corps. I'm always heartened by the warmth of your reception and inspired by the awareness that, however daunting the challenges may be from time to time, I am able to rely on the solid support of members of the DLP family wherever they may be found. Since we last met in annual conference, a number of stalwarts of this organization have passed from this life and are now gathered unto their fathers. I speak of Trevor Maynard, Sylvester Trotman, and Gregory Nurse of St. Michael East, Alfred Nurse and Robert Morris of Christchurch South, Alvin Phil Perry of St. James North, James Weeks of St. Philip West, Eldine Blackman of St. Lucie, Augustin Ben of St. Peter, Edna Culpepper and Sinclair Cobham of St. Joseph, and Pauline Seeley of our UK branch. These all contributed massively to the building and reinforcement of the Democratic Labour Party over many years, and are now sorely missed. We thank them for the sacrifices of their time, their energy, and their commitment, all of which have made our party the great organization it is today. Experience of the loss of these stalwarts was rendered the more acute by the recent loss also of Sir Frederick Gladstone Sleepy Smith, a co-founder and first chairman of our party, first Attorney General of independent Barbados, redoubtable advocate at the bar, a distinguished jurist, and well-known humanitarian. Sir Frederick was the last of that formidable triumvirate that steered the DLP through its formative years. The other two members being, of course, Errol Walton Barrow and James Cameron Shooter. His memoir, Dreaming a Nation, is compulsory reading for all those members of this party who aspire to a better understanding of the road traveled, not only by Sir Frederick himself, not only by the Democratic Labour Party, but also by Barbados as it moved to and through nationhood down to the present. We remember Sir Frederick Smith with profound gratitude and pray that upon him, as upon all the other stalwarts mentioned, light perpetual will resplendently shine. May I call on you to stand and observe a minute's silence in tribute to our fallen comrades. May they all rest in peace. Thank you. Our 61st annual conference comes at a time when Barbados as a nation is celebrating its golden jubilee, 50 years as a nation. These celebrations were formally launched by me in Independence Square on January 6th this year. The full text of my speech on that occasion is contained in your conference document. A number of iconic events were planned for the period of celebration, and some have already been executed with resounding success. The last event executed was the tribute to our sole surviving national hero, Right Excellence Garfield Sobers, at Kensington Oval on his birthday on 28th of July. Sir Gary's own testimony was that he last saw Kensington Oval that full on the occasion of the finals of Cricket World Cup 2007. The next event will be a tribute to that titan of the Labour movement, Right Excellent Sir Frank Leslie Walcott, also a late member and parliamentarian of this great party. Your full support of this event is confidently expected. This year also marks the 75th anniversary year of the Barbados Workers' Union, an institution that did much to give character to our independence efforts, and that has had a long and edifying relationship with the Democratic Labour Party. In their time, Frank Walcott, Leroy Trotman, Evelyn Grays, and Bobby Morris all sat as parliamentarians of the DLP in the House of Assembly of Barbados. Indeed, the 1961 manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party committed the party to working closely with the Barbados Workers' Union with a view to the establishment of a college for workers. And of course, that college now exists at Mangrove in the Parish of St. Philip. Our relationship with the Labour movement can stand the test of the most searching scrutiny. And I therefore urge all members to give full and unmistakable support to the Barbados Workers' Union as it celebrates its Diamond Jubilee. Much of the stability which we have enjoyed in Barbados over the last 75 years can be traced to the maturity and depth of the Barbados Workers' Union's approach to industrial relations in this country. Nor dare we overlook the outstanding contribution made to Barbados during its 50 years of independence by members of our private sector of Barbados. Their maturity and love of country, as well, saw Barbados through 4 major recessionary periods without major social dislocation. I speak of the recession caused by the oil crisis of 1973, the recession of 1981 to 83, the recession of 1991 to 93, and that of 2008, virtually to the present, of course with varying degrees of intensity. Not everything was always rosy between successive governments and the labor movement and the private sector during these difficult transitions. But the people of Barbados could always count on the private sector and the labor movement to put Barbados first at crunch time. My own experience in dealing with the private sector and the labor movement over the past 6 years has been nothing if not salutary. We did not agree on everything, but never once did I get or was given the impression that they were prepared to elevate their own interests above the interests of their nation, Barbados. I should like publicly to thank both, therefore, for the largeness of outlook so often evident in their approach to matters touching and concerning the welfare of this nation. I commit to continue active consultation with them in the national interest. The world of 1966 was, of course, a completely different one from that which we know today. The two superpower world which gave the Caribbean its strategic importance has now been dismantled. The trading preferences which countries like Barbados enjoyed are not very much around anymore, and the structure of our own economic arrangements has undergone fundamental change. Sugar is no longer king, and manufacturing no longer enjoys the competitiveness of yesteryear. Emigration outlets have substantially dried up. In their place, in 2016, we now live in a one superpower world in which Barbados and countries like Barbados have to fight their own battles in a ring where larger, more powerful, and better resource countries can be found. As a region, our strategic importance is substantially diminished since the threat of spreading communism and or Marxist socialism has receded. Tourism has replaced sugar as king in the Barbados economy, and the international business and financial services sector envisioned in 1965 by the Democratic Labour Party, when the first piece of legislation on this sector was passed, has now attained a decent level of maturity. Barbados now is, for all practical purposes, a services economy, with all of the risks that attend that reality. We now live in a world where every honest and informed commentator accepts that the gap between the rich and the poor has widened since the end of the Cold War between East and West. It is now stated as an axiom that 90% of the world's wealth is now controlled by 10% of the world's people. And 90% of the world's people now have to compete among themselves for the remaining 10% of the world's wealth. This is the depressing report card of the globalization which was heralded by the ending of the global bipolar arrangements around 1989-1990. The late Professor Rex Nettleford of the University of the West Indies may well have been right when he warned that globalization was just a new name for an old obscenity. In the industrialized world, middle classes are struggling for survival and are quietly, perhaps not so quietly, being described as the working poor. For an increasingly large number of people at the bottom in Western society, the number of rungs on the ladder to middle class status seems to have increased exponentially. These events outside of Barbados have had implications for Barbados and its CARICOM neighbors. Threats and actual experience of acts of terror have not helped the situation in which we have had to live, to move, and to have our being. Most recent experience of this has been the determination by correspondent banks outside of the Caribbean to withdraw their services from respondent banks in our region with the argument that the Caribbean is a high-risk area. Let me assure you that at the local and regional levels, a vigorous battle is being waged to stymie this sinister attempt to cut the Caribbean off from the rest of the world. It is against this kind of background that our present realities have to be analyzed and evaluated. To pretend that Barbados is screened off from the effects, good and bad, of what is going on in the rest of the world is to indulge in a kind of self-deception which ill becomes any thinking person in this society. When the effects were generally good, we benefited from and enjoyed them. When the effects have not been so good, we've had to adjust to and endure them. So has it been to a great extent since the year 2008. That is the context in which we observe 50 years of independence. Present challenges should not blind us, however, to the fact that between 1966 and the year 2016, Barbadians have enjoyed one of the most accessible and affordable healthcare systems in the Western Hemisphere. They should not blind us to the fact that we've enjoyed one of the best education systems in this hemisphere. They should not blind us to the fact either that we have one of the best social security systems in this hemisphere. And certainly, they should not blind us to the fact that we've been able to benefit from the exertions of one of the most efficient and well-trained public services in this hemisphere. Over the past 50 years, we have provided a high quality of health care, but escalating costs have now required us to look for ways to finance this high quality of health care if we are to retain its best features. In this connection, the Ministry of Health has begun the consultation process, which should lead to a firm determination on the way forward for healthcare delivery in Barbados. Doctors are entitled to agitate for the best and most modern equipment. Nurses for better remuneration and conditions of service. Administrators for more modern systems and better physical conditions. And the public for more efficient and timely healthcare delivery. These are all legitimate concerns and must be addressed, but they come at a cost, and that issue is receiving the sustained attention of the Ministry of Health, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and the government of Barbados. The greatest contribution that citizens can make to this general effort, however, is to take better care of their own health so that we can become a society that increasingly deals with health issues preventively at much lower costs rather than curatively at much higher costs. If each of us can pay just a little more attention to those diseases that result from our own lifestyle choices and make a genuine effort at lifestyle changes, we will put less pressure on the healthcare system. In that connection, the job of public education on the issue of chronic non-communicable diseases is essential and must continue. As is the case with healthcare, So too with education. This party has always been and continues to be the party of education, having introduced free secondary education, reinforced our primary education system, vigorously promoted nursery education, introduced locally a campus of the University of the West Indies, built the Barbados Community College, built the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic, and built the Barbados Hospitality Institute. The party is also built in the 31 years it has held office since its formation. 7 of the 8 public secondary schools introduced in Barbados since 1961. Yet another secondary school at Searles in the parish of Christchurch is at an advanced stage of the planning process. There can be no compromise, therefore, on how this party approaches the delivery of education in Barbados. Having said that, though, we must continue to monitor the escalation of costs in the sector and make sure that there is a more equitable and proportionate spread of the resources available for the education of our young people. Another area of particular concern in this our Jubilee year is that of public transport. It is my sense that Barbadians have always yearned for the day when they can have a public transport system sufficiently reliable, sufficiently ordered, and sufficiently comprehensive to allow them to put their cars down sometimes and plan their schedules and movements around that system. That state of bliss has eluded us so far, but I do not think that it is unattainable. Other countries, after all, have attained it. I am aware that the Minister of Transport and Works is in determined pursuit of that laudable ideal, but that too comes at a cost. Because of the relationship between the public transport system and the ability of large numbers of people across Barbados to get to work and to get there on time, this issue must continue to engage our attention. The Transport Board needs more resources, a more efficient and economical source of spare parts, a highly motivated workforce, and the continued commitment of its management to take it along the road to the realization of the ideal to which I have just drawn attention. The government is committed to ensuring that the board is facilitated in the pursuit of its objectives. If all of these objectives are achieved, but we are, however, all trapped in a degraded environment, our achievements would be nothing worth. The environment is now a front-burner issue globally, and is also a very important one for Barbados. Every Barbadian is now aware of the challenges being faced by the public authorities in the area both of collection and disposal of waste. As I've said before, these challenges could not have existed in the year 1966 because Barbados was not as highly developed, nor were its consumer tastes so diversified. Solid waste disposal is a high agenda item for the Cabinet of Barbados, and properly resourcing the Sanitation Service Authority is a matter of the greatest urgency if the collection of our solid waste is to be done more efficiently. As you are aware, it is intended that a portion of the proceeds of the National Social Responsibility Levy, recently announced by the Minister of Finance, will be allocated to addressing this hot and very pressing problem. One of the 4 pillars on which the vision of the government of Barbados rests is that of creating a Barbados that is environmentally sound. From this commitment, there can be no retreat. The alternatives would be too costly for all of us. Now, the successes of Barbados over the last 50 years can be linked to an infinity of traces. I should like to say a word about the workers in the public service of Barbados, with whom ministers and parliamentary secretaries have to work from day to day, and with whom also members of the public have to interact. We have a tendency to take the contribution of these loyal men and women for granted. When they do not produce at a speed appropriate to our temperament, they become the butt of unsparing criticism. Yet, without the public service which we have had over the last 50 years, Barbados could not have made the giant strides it was able to make as an independent nation. Nowhere else in Barbados can there be found as stellar a concentration of intellectual talent. The diversity of skills for a society as small as ours is stunning. Critics may encounter one or two of these skills displayed on the outermost layers of the service, but very seldom do they have access to those at the core. Nor do they have a chance to see the high quality opinions and advice that are the pleasure of those of us whose privilege it is to work closely with these hard-working, patriotic citizens of Barbados at both the higher and lower echelons of the service. Notwithstanding these positive features, a survey done by the National Initiative for Service Excellence in about the year 2011 found that, like a similar percentage in the private sector, 33% of these workers are disengaged while on the job. Now, the problem of disengagement at the workplace is, of course, a deep issue that cries out for further study, since it is not just a public sector problem, but is a private sector problem as well. In other words, it is a national problem that we must address together. What I do know is that the uncertainty which bedevils the lives of many officers who have been working for years but are not yet appointed has produced unacceptable levels of alienation, frustration, insecurity, and in some cases, plain disillusionment. Their lives have been put basically on hold, since they can transact no business that partakes of other than the very short term, and their hopes of upward mobility are cheated of fulfillment. These workers have the same dreams, the same hopes, the same aspirations as those who are appointed. They certainly have the same domestic and family obligations, but they are stuck in the system with prospects of forward or upward movement depending on circumstances beyond their direct control. Admittedly, the stated policy of the government is the crafting of a public service that is not too large, that is efficient, and that is highly motivated enough to aggressively pursue the public policy goals of the government and the overall ideals of this nation. Therefore, the policy is that when officers retire, existing skills in the service will be redeployed where this is possible and sustainable. This process of redeployment will be accompanied by reorganization and rationalization of ministries and departments to maximize their efficiencies. The decision, therefore, to appoint all eligible officers in the public service who have been continuously employed in temporary positions for 3 years or more will add nothing to the wages bill of the government, since these officers are already going to work every day and are already being paid. That these officers now function in temporary positions is evidence of the fact that they are needed in the public service. Officers not captured by Section 13, subsection 7 of the Public Service Act of 2007 will be the beneficiaries of this initiative, but this too will have a threshold date, as the Minister of Finance indicated, which will be determined by the special committee to be set up for the purpose of dealing with this proposal. For the next 50 years, Barbados will need the best services of its best men and women. If upward and onward we are to go, inspired, exulting, and free, and if greater our nation is to grow in strength and unity. I do not share the views of our political adversaries and some of their acolytes that thousands of Barbadians are walking around hungry, can't find no water to drink, that the bulk of the people in the country are suffering, that Barbados is now the dirtiest place in the world, and that the country is withering away. I heard all of these claims made by speakers on the opposition benches in the just concluded debate on the financial statement and budgetary proposals. That is not the Barbados I experience from day to day as I move around. In any event, I would never have the courage to present that picture of my country to the world. But I understand the desperation that has befallen the Barbados Labour Party. I understand also its unfortunate degeneration into an organization that now performs the role of merchant of alarm, despondency, and despair. No one in the Democratic Labour Party denies that the country is passed through a testing period. But I've never lived in a Barbados where there were not pockets of people who, in the face of all of the opulence and prosperity around them, could not make ends meet. I heard one of the candidates for the presidency of the United States of America say recently that in that country, the richest country and the largest economy on earth, there are 36 million people on food stamps. When Barbados was benefiting between 1992 and 2007 from the longest period of post-war prosperity in the United States of America, there were still people here in Barbados who could not make ends meet. There were still upwards of 20,000 people on the waiting list of the National Housing Corporation. The difference between the leader of the opposition and me is that whereas she was poor by proxy, I was poor by actual experience. Whereas she knows about poverty by hearsay, I know about it by growing up in a modest channel house without electricity or running water, run by a maid mother only, having lost my father at age 9. So when I speak about poverty, I can bring conviction to what I say based on actual experience and not have to rely on what I hear other people say. I'm thankful that a hard-working and committed cabinet has stuck to the task of working for a turnaround in Barbados' economic fortunes. We did not and do not always agree on everything. But the only places in Barbados where people agree on everything are in the Westbury Cemetery, at Coral Ridge, at Bushy Park, and in all of the churchyards of the nation where everybody is dead. Some of our members panic a little more quickly than others are inclined to do. As you have heard from Dr. Stuart, the word panic has never had a functional role in my personal vocabulary. Members of the cabinet have stuck to the task, and positive signs have been emerging in Barbados' economic fortunes. Those signs, I contend, will become more evident as we implement the program just announced in the recently delivered financial statement and budgetary proposals of the Minister of Finance. The proposals are a challenge, particularly to the private sector, through promised amendments to the Special Development Areas Act. A challenge to the small business sector, through the $50 million being made available to that sector by way of a blend of grants and soft loans. A challenge to our young people who are students to continue to work hard and aim high, encouraged by the recapitalization of the Student Revolving Loan Fund. It is a challenge also to defaulting taxpayers through yet another amnesty given to them to regularize their tax status, and a challenge to those public officers whose employment status will be put on a footing more secure. I have not attempted in this speech to exhaust the residue of challenges in agriculture, in statutory boards, in water, and in the economy, where reforms are underway to put Barbados and its economy on a more secure footing. I urge the family of the Democratic Labour Party to continue to have faith in the future and in the promise of Barbados. This is our country, and it has been very good to all of us. The most casual look at your television screen, your tablet or cell phone, or the most casual exposure to your radio will be enough to remind you that our challenges notwithstanding, there are many countries in the world which are far less congenial places in which to live than this great country of ours. There must always be room for positive criticism, but we must not allow ourselves to be distracted or sidetracked by that motley collection of poorly organized self-seekers, for some of whom political office means at last securing steady employment, and for others of whom political office is as good an opportunity as any for personal aggrandizement. So, as you are bombarded from day to day by those who want to see no good whatsoever in what we are doing, let me draw your attention to the immortal words of Vice President Theodore Roosevelt, as he then was, when he spoke at the Sorbonne in France in the year 1900. And I'm quoting him. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumphs of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Unquote. Great is the Democratic Labour Party, and great this party must remain. Thank you very much.
Comrades, let's give our party president, our leader, every time the guests who arrive here today for this address, we're going to take a break for lunch. So I want you to be patient and please be seated as we allow our Prime Minister and the members of Parliament to exit, especially when it is. I also want to make an announcement that Hoodie's Bar is open over on the lawn. Dr. Nestle has the keys to Hoodie's Bar. He has the biggest tent on the lawn. So comrades,